gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today I realized I've had the Boss Katana, the original version, Mark 1, for about 4 or 5 years now. I think in October it'll be 6 years. I'll share some secret tone tips, as well as my favorite settings. I'll share some sounds, and just in general what I think of it, pros and cons of the amp. Let's get right into it. So that tone you heard in the intro is kind of my go-to tone. It is the lead channel, gain pushed so it's saturating but not flubby, so a good middle ground of the gain. And then I leave the bass and middle straight up and down, and I just turn down the treble to sort of as like a brightness control almost. That's really all I do. Whenever I dial in, I just make it loud. I set the gain to how I want, how I'm feeling that day. If I'm going more classic rock, I'll bring it back a little bit more. If I'm going for something more modern, I'll push it. So let's hear that again. One of the things I love about setting the amp this way is that it really responds to your playing. So when you bring down the volume, or if you're like me and you rock the neck pickup lower than the bridge pickup, I don't know if you can see that, you can get all sorts of great clean crunch tones without touching anything. Now this is the Mark 1, and like I said, I did try and do some software shenanigans when I first got it. I believe you can change the cabinet resonance or the speaker type virtually, but really I came full circle and went back to modern. I think that's the one by default, but I remember the vintage one I thought I wanted, but it sounded horrible, so steer clear of that. The modern and the deep I think are the best. I will mess around with some of the other channels to let you know what those sound like. 90% of the time I use the lead channel. The crunch is really if I want clean tones. The natural distortion from each of the channels I think sounds the best when there's no drive and no sort of other saturation affecting the gain profile. So I just flipped it to crunch. I didn't change the EQ stack at all. Let's see how it sounds. Sounds a little bit more classic. Just sounds really, really bad in a good way. Very fun to mess around with those sorts of more mushy lead tones. Now let's do some clean tones, shall we? So those were the clean tones, using the crunch channel. The clean channel, I don't really like using that much because there's not enough compression, and I don't want to use the software to throw in a compressor in front of everything. I also don't want to use a pedal, so just using the profile with a little bit more gain sort of helps add that natural compression and warmth that I want. So let's go on to the brown channel, the super high gain channel. Let's rip that quick. I don't know if you guys can notice this or whether it's just bugs me, but the brown channel has this weird sort of hi-fi fuzzy thing going on. That's the main reason I use the lead channel 90% of the time, is because it's a more sort of natural, hard, punchy sort of gain instead of this super saturated fuzzy buzzy sort of thing. But I just like the distortion on the lead channel a little bit more. So what I have dialed in right now is the same settings I've been running the whole time. You know, just turn the treble down a little bit. And I have the gain set to max. So let's see how this sounds. And now, back to my normal settings, comes full circle. So now that we've talked about some tones, I'll tell you a couple secrets to get this thing sounding really bitchin'. Really, there's only one. Using the master volume as like a fine control and using the gain volume as a gross control. But really you want the master pushing pretty high, and then you bring the normal volume up to what's appropriate for your situation, and then you can use this to fine-tune the volume. Let's talk about pros and cons. Pros of this amp: it is sturdy, man. You can definitely sit on it and not worry. Like, it's just built very well. The grill cloth isn't saggy or anything. The other good thing is it's small and it's really, really loud. That thing can keep up with any drummer in any sort of venue. It gets wicked loud. I've never heard how loud it actually goes. I've never used all of the loudness, but I do play in a rock band with a pretty heavy-hitting drummer, and I've had no problems. The other thing, like I said, is it's small, dude. You can just throw this in your car, in the back seat. You can carry all your stuff in one trip. It's great, it's awesome. My main gripe is that, you know, this does a lot of things really well. I only use one other thing. I wish I didn't have to update firmware. I wish I didn't have to tinker around with, you know, the software side of things. I wish there was less. I wish it was kind of de-bloated a little bit. All that stuff does give versatility and good value, but like, the reverbs sound terrible. The stereo delay isn't stereo delay because there's only one speaker. Really, the only effects that sound good is like the phase 90. I don't think that's loaded by default. I think you have to go into the software and load that in yourself. I know a lot of budget amps that are trying to compete with this do that sort of same thing of having a bunch of stuff to add value and versatility, but it doesn't really do one thing amazingly well. With all that being said, I hope this video brought you some amount of value or entertainment. I don't have any sponsorships. I don't do any in-video ads, so if you guys could support me on Patreon, you'll get a bunch backing tracks as well as some more exclusive behind the scenes content. If you have a Boss Katana that you've been ripping on for a while, let me know how you guys like yours. So with that being said, I will see you guys next time.